All right, so now we are going to talk about compressing and EQing synths or pianos or anything in that realm. And normally it goes the same way. Guitars can be a little different. Certain synths can be a little different. It depends on how punchy they are. But that's why it's always good to learn, instead of learning how to do one thing, like, oh, I know how to compress and EQ kicks. It's really good to learn how to do it in many different situations so that if something isn't right and something isn't working, you know how to fix it. That's the whole job of a mixing engineer or anything like that, is knowing what you're hearing and what you're going to fix. It's never just about doing the same process over and over. If that was the case, then why would we ever have mixing engineers or sound engineers if we could just make a computer do it? Which they're almost there. Soon I'm gonna be out of a job. So let's listen to this synth I have here. I have this synth vocal mixture from a loop pack that I have. It sounds pretty good to start with. They've obviously done some mixing themselves, but to make it work with our sounds, that's what we're gonna have to do, is compress and EQ it. Main EQing that comes with synths and instruments that are more synthy is gonna be making them fit in the mix. Unless they have some serious issues, it's gonna be mainly about cutting frequencies so they fit. So it's gonna be finding the frequencies that aren't working with them and make them work. But let's start with hearing our sound. What do we got? Cool little sample, a lot of heartfelt. So let's go grab an EQ. I'm using the Pro LQ3. Like I always say, you can use whatever you damn well please. It does not matter. Use the EQ in live for all I care. I really don't care. If you know what you're doing, it's not going to change the quality much. You can always have workarounds. You do not need to spend your money on EQs and compressors and stuff. It just helps you a little bit. Like the Pro Q can do a lot of cool things and I like it. But if you're starting out, just learn the compressor and the EQ on Ableton. It's simpler. You can get things done quicker. Doesn't take as much CPU power. So, all right. So let's visualize with this. We already have some high end and some low end that I can already tell we're not going to need. So let's cut that shenanigans out, dude. I'm going to make a brick wall like I always do. Listen. So it almost sounds like they kept the sub bass in this sample. Guess it could just be the low end of that piano. But I still don't want the kick is taking up, we want the kick to have a lot of space here and the sub bass is all down here. And so really for the most part, there's different ways we could do this, but I'm gonna see how much we can cut. So I'm using a pretty slow curvature here because I do like that low end there. It's just too early to tell if we can cut it out. But that seems reasonably okay. Let's go to the high end, see what we can get rid of. Brick wall, listen. So it's about 3,900 hertz, somewhere around there, that we can cut. Make it 24. Yeah, let's make it 24 dB. So that's what I'm hearing, that we're not changing the sound much with these two. Which is what we want. All we want to do is get rid of the shit that we don't need, and we don't need those. Can't hear them? Why do we need them? We don't need it. We don't need those. We just need this frequency range right here. Now we need to cut out some of these frequencies. I can hear this whistle. When the voice comes in, it goes like, whoa, and there's like this whistling, and it's making me a little crazy. It's right here, I think. Nope, that's not it. I guess it's higher. Once again, I made a bell. I made a very strong, what do you call that? The Q knob, I guess? Yeah, my Q knob's all the way up pretty much. I'm trying to listen, see if I can find that whistle at the end there. Man. Okay, so if it's not that big of a deal, it's almost better just to not cut it because you're going to create different frequencies by cutting, and it could be a big deal later, but it's not a big deal right now. But now what we want to do is I want to go through my other sounds and see where they could be conflicting. So if I go to my hi-hats or my shakers and I list solo them with my piano and that's it. They sound fine. They have so much room. The shakers do not need any help. And the snare, which the snare is so weak, it has no middle. I should probably make another tutorial on how to add more low end to my snare by adding another snare because that's a very high end snare. I don't like that snare, but it's not being conflicting with the synth. This is what we're talking about. So we're going to go to now the sub bass. So because it's such a basic sound and not much low end, I think we're good there too. The kick. Now, something I like to do for precautions is to take out the punch frequency that we found earlier. And I already know what it is, but just for the sake of this tutorial being separate, I'm going to show you again that we found it here. It's 96.995 Hertz. That's our punch frequency. And we want to make sure that there's always enough room in the entire mix for that punch frequency. So I'm going to make another bell here in the synth group that we have. Make it steep again. And we're going to cut on the synth. We're going to solo the synth though, so we can see how much we can cut. So I'm going to cut -5. That was EQ of the synth. We really don't need to do too much more at the moment because we haven't added that much to this song. This is a very simple song. Not many sounds going on, not much dynamic or changes. So right now I wouldn't cut anymore. I wouldn't do too much more. Even cutting that much out in the kick was a little much, but it's still reasonable. It's still good. So I'm going to add a compressor. Now this can change with every sound. Basics that you want to do with your synth compression is you want to have a very low threshold and a very quick attack and a very long release. This is a technique I learned a while ago. Guarantee you a bunch of mixing engineers are grabbing their computer screens right now. And what are you doing? I'm going to do 700 millisecond release and a very quick, like 0.24 millisecond attack. My ratio is going to be at 1, which is nothing. The compressor's not going to do anything. Nothing is happening, right? Now the goal, you don't want your threshold all the way down. It's a little ridiculous, but you do want it very low. So with the fab filter, we can see the meat of the sound. Look at all this meat down here. So we want to go pretty deep into that sound. So I'm gonna go to like a -48, somewhere around there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna gently raise that ratio up. I'm gonna turn it up very slightly until we get to -1 or -2, whatever we want to do. We can always raise the gain. But basically what we're doing is we're going to be so gently squashing this synth that it's undistinguishable, but it just squashes a little bit to control it. And it's supposed to be smooth and it's supposed to be undistinguishable and just controlled. And so the way to do that is what I'm doing right now. Low threshold, no ratio, 0 ratio, pretty much a 1, quick attack, long release. What we're going to do is gently raise this ratio up and you'll see how quickly, even with like a 1.13 or something like that ratio, normally I'm breaking it too because the threshold's so low and the attack is so quick. You normally don't need much. Well, don't do that. Not even at a 0.03 yet. So we're losing some life there. going to bring it back. Okay. So now we're there. Not much dB taken off, not much reduction. 1.5, 1.4. Let's see if that's actually represented in the actual output. I'm going to turn off this compressor, look at the output of the master. Negative 18.3. Seems pretty consistent. Let's go to that compressor. (19.6). 18.3.3. That is, see, because the release is so long and the attack so quick, you're getting almost the direct results of a negative 1.4 reduction, which is pretty good when it comes to control. We are controlling that sound at least by a 1.4 reduction dB, which is good. You can't hear any difference. I can't hear any difference. Maybe like it's so slight. So there's just the slightest of dynamics being removed from the synth, but that much control is really all you need. I even would dare to turn it up a tiny bit. Let's see if we can get that 1.8. I have a 1.8 reduction now. Now it's getting too squashy. It's crazy how just a couple, half of a dB there totally changes the effect of it. Let's go back to that 1.4. That's going to be the compression for the synth and the EQ. Very basic because our sounds are basic at the moment. There's a lot more we're going to be doing in terms of effects, in terms of buses, in terms of other things when it comes to mixing. But right now, this is the basics just to get your sounds in their like sections on what they're going to be. It's almost like you're kind of creating their character, and then we're going to move on past that. But right now, it's the EQ and the compression. And I don't want to boost anything. This would be if you wanted to boost any frequencies in these synths, which would be like, if I wanted to get some more of that high end, I'd boost like maybe like the thousands. Which might be cool later. It might sound good once the mix is getting all there, but I don't want to boost it right now. Because that would be after the compression is where you want to boost. A lot of mixing engineers have different opinions on when to boost your EQ frequencies, and I always do it after my compression. I take out my frequencies I don't like, compress, and then I add the frequencies I want, but I do not want to add any yet. And so that is basic EQ and compression of a synth or synths or anything in the synth range.